Welcome back, my friends, to English Plus Podcast. In our last episode, we took on the grand and often dismissed idea of peace. We reframed it not as a naive dream, but as a practical, essential project for humanity, the only true sustainable way forward. We talked about the staggering costs of conflict and the immense power of cooperation. But that leaves us with a huge question. If peace is something we can build, what are the tools? What are our tools? Well, today we're going to focus on the most powerful, most readily available, and most frequently misused tool that every single one of us possesses: our language. Now think about the last time you had a disagreement. It doesn't have to be a big one. Maybe it was with a partner about who was supposed to take out the trash. Maybe it was with a coworker about a deadline, or with a friend about a misunderstanding. Now think about the words that were used. Did they act like gasoline on a fire, or like water? Did they build a wall between you, or did they start to build a bridge? Words are the currency of our relationships. We use them to express love, to share ideas, to build amazing things together. But with a slight shift in tone, a different choice of phrase, that same tool can become a weapon. It can inflict wounds that are invisible but can last for longer than any physical scar. How we speak can ignite a conflict from a tiny spark, or it can create a space of calm where understanding can grow. My friends, today we're diving headfirst into the language of peace. We'll explore the specific words, phrases, and techniques that help us de-escalate tension, connect with others, and foster genuine understanding. This isn't about learning a secret code or becoming a master debater. It's about learning the art of communication that builds, not breaks. If you want your words to carry the weight of peace instead of the sting of friction, you're in the right place. I'm Danny, and this is a new episode from English Plus Podcast. Before we learn how to build with our words, we need to understand how we so often use them to destroy. We usually don't do it on purpose. Much of our conflict language is reflexive. It's a habit we've learned from watching others, from movies, from a culture that often frames conversation as a competition to be won. Now let's shine a light on some of these common conflict triggers so we can learn to recognize them in ourselves and others. First up is the king of all conflict starters, the accusation, which usually comes in the form of a you statement. Think about the difference between these two sentences. You are always so messy. You never clean up after yourself. Or we can say it, I'm feeling really stressed out by the clutter in the kitchen. Can you feel the difference? The first one is a direct attack. The word you at the start acts like a pointed finger. The person hearing this immediately feels judged and criticized. Their natural human reaction is not going to be, you know what, you're right, I'll go clean. No, their reaction is going to be defensiveness. Their walls go straight up. They're going to think of a counterattack. Well, I'm not the one who leaves wet towels on the floor. And just like that, you're in a fight. You're no longer talking about the messy kitchen, you're in a battle of who is the worst person. You statements put the focus entirely on the other person's perceived flaws. You made me feel bad. You ruined the plan. You're not listening to me. It's a language of blame. And blame never leads to a solution. It only leads to more conflict. Closely related to you statements are absolutes and exaggerations. These are words like always, never, everything, nothing, completely, and totally. For example, you always interrupt me, or you never listen to what I have to say, or this is literally the worst thing that could have happened. Now, the problem with these words is that they are almost never true. Has the person really never, not even once, listened to you? Do they interrupt you every single time they speak? Of course not. When you use an absolute, you are not describing reality. You are expressing your frustration in the most extreme terms possible. The other person hears this and their brain immediately goes into fact-checking mode. They won't hear your underlying feeling of being ignored. they will only hear the inaccuracy and they will respond to that. They will say, for example, "That's not true. I listened to you yesterday for an hour." And again, you're off track. You're now arguing about the frequency of past listening habits instead of the current feeling of being unheard. Next on our list of conflict triggers is labeling and generalizing. This is when we stop talking about a specific action or behavior and start attacking the person's character. For example, instead of saying, "That report had a few typos in it," we might say, "You are so careless." Instead of saying, "I disagree with that idea," we might say, "That's a stupid idea." See the shift? We've gone from addressing a specific, solvable issue to making a broad negative judgment about the person. When you call someone careless or lazy or stupid, you're not inviting them to a conversation, you're delivering a verdict. And just like with "you" statements, the only response is to fight back against that label. It's deeply personal and immediately escalates the situation. Then we have the subtle but powerful assassin of connection, dismissive language. These are the phrases we use, often with good intentions, to try and shut down someone else's emotions. The most famous one is, of course, "calm down." Has telling someone to calm down ever actually made them calm? And be honest with yourselves. Has it ever worked? I'm going to guess the answer is a resounding no. It usually has the exact opposite effect. Why? Because it implies that their emotional state is wrong, that it's an overreaction. It invalidates their feelings. Other phrases in this family include, "You're being too sensitive," or "It's not a big deal," or "Don't worry about it," or "You're overreacting." When someone is expressing a strong emotion, anger, fear, sadness, and we meet it with dismissal, we are essentially telling them, "Your feelings are not valid or appropriate." This doesn't make their feelings go away. It just makes them feel misunderstood and alone, and now they have a new problem. Not only are they upset about the original issue, but they're also upset with you for not getting it. And finally, there's the sneaky habit of mind reading. This is when we assume we know the other person's intentions and we state it as a fact. For example, "You left that on the counter just to annoy me." Or, "You were late on purpose because you don't respect my time." Or, "You're being quiet because you're mad at me." The truth is, we can never know for sure what is going on inside someone else's head. We can only know our own feelings and observations. When we claim to know their intentions, especially when we assign negative ones, we are creating a story, then blaming them for it. This forces them to defend not just their actions, but their inner thoughts. It is an impossible position to be in and a very quick way to start a fight based on a fiction you created in your own mind. So, to recap, our conflict toolkit includes "you" statements, absolutes, labeling, dismissive language, and mind reading. These are the verbal equivalents of throwing stones. Now let's learn how to put down the stones and start using tools that build. That's coming next. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. If the language of conflict is about blame, judgment, and assumption, then the language of peace is about ownership, curiosity, and validation. It's not about being soft or avoiding difficult conversations. It is about having those difficult conversations in a way that is far more likely to lead to a positive outcome. It's about being skilled, not just loud. The first and most important tool in your peacemaker's toolkit is the antidote to the "you" statement. It is, fittingly, the "I" statement. The "I" statement is a simple but revolutionary way to express your feelings and needs without attacking the other person. It shifts the focus from what's wrong with them to what's happening inside of you. The classic formula looks like this. You can say "I feel," and here you state your emotion, "when," and here you use a specific, non-judgmental description of the behavior, and then "because," and here you add the impact it has on you. So you see, "I feel," "when," "because." That's the classic formula. Let's go back to our messy kitchen example. The "you" statement was, "You are always so messy. You never clean up after yourself." The "I" statement version is, I feel overwhelmed and stressed when I see dishes piled up in the sink because it makes our home feel chaotic to me. Now let's break that down. I feel overwhelmed and stressed. You are owning your emotion. It is your feeling. It is undeniable. No one can argue with how you feel. When I see dishes piled up in the sink, this is a specific observable behavior. You're not saying when you are a messy slob. No, you're pointing to the dishes in the sink. It is a fact. And finally, because it makes our home feel chaotic to me, this explains the consequence. It connects their action to your feeling. It's about your need for an orderly space. Do you see how this changes everything? An I statement is an invitation to a conversation. It opens a door. A you statement builds a wall. By using an I statement, you are sharing your experience, not delivering a judgment. This makes it so much easier for the other person to hear you without becoming defensive. They are much more likely to respond with empathy and a desire to solve the problem rather than a counterattack. Let's try another one. Let me start with a you statement. You never text me back. You obviously don't care. The I statement goes like this. I feel a bit worried and forgotten when I don't hear back from you for a few hours because I start to wonder if everything is okay. It's honest, it's vulnerable, and it's incredibly effective. My friends, mastering the I statement is probably the single biggest upgrade you can make to your communication skills. Now let's move on to the next tool, which is just as crucial, and it's called active listening. Most of us don't listen to understand. Let's face it, and let's be honest with ourselves. We just listen to reply. While the other person is talking, we're not truly observing what they're saying. Instead, we're busy formulating our rebuttal, preparing our defense, or waiting for our turn to speak. Active listening is the conscious act of shutting down that inner voice and focusing completely on the other person with the goal of understanding their world, not only their words. Now, one of the most powerful techniques of active listening is paraphrasing and reflecting. This is when you repeat back what you heard the other person say, in your own words. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but it's like magic. It can start with phrases like, so what I'm hearing you say is, and you just paraphrase whatever you said, or it sounds like you're feeling, and obviously you talk about how they're feeling according to how you understood it. Let me see if I understand. You're saying that, and of course you say what they were saying. Now let me give you an example. Imagine your coworker is upset and says, I'm just so fed up. I worked all weekend on this report, and then the boss just glanced at it for 2 seconds and said it was fine. All that work for nothing. A typical non-active listening response might be, well, that's just how the boss is, or at least he said it was fine. Both of these dismiss the feeling. An active listening response would be, wow, so what I'm hearing is that you're feeling incredibly frustrated and unappreciated because you put in a huge amount of effort and it felt like it wasn't even recognized. What does this do? First, it confirms that you are actually listening. Second, it gives the other person a chance to clarify if you've misunderstood them. They might say, yes, exactly, or, well, not unappreciated, just disappointed. And third, and most importantly, it makes the other person feel heard. And feeling heard is a fundamental human need. The very act of having your feelings acknowledged and reflected back to you is incredibly de-escalating. You can literally watch the tension leave a person's body when they feel understood. So that was the second tool. Now let me move to the third tool in our kit, and this one is validation. This one can be tricky because people often confuse validation with agreement. They are not the same thing. Validation is acknowledging that someone's feelings are understandable from their perspective, even if you don't agree with their conclusion or their facts. That's a very important thing to understand. Validation is nothing like agreement. You can be in complete disagreement with someone and still validate their emotional experience. It is one of the most powerful bridge-building tools there is. Now, key phrases for validation include things like, I can see why you would feel that way, or that sounds incredibly difficult, or it makes sense that you're upset about that, or if I were in your shoes, I might feel the same way. Let's say a friend is angry because they believe you shared a secret of theirs. You know you didn't. Your first instinct is to defend yourself, right? I did not. I would never do that. Well, this immediately puts you on opposing sides. Now try starting with validation. Try saying something like this. Wow, I can see why you would be absolutely furious. Believing that I betrayed your trust must feel awful. That sounds incredibly hurtful. You haven't agreed that you did it. You've simply agreed that if they believe you did it, their anger is a perfectly logical and valid emotional response. By validating their feeling first, you lower their defenses. You show them that you are on the side of their feeling, even if you disagree on the facts. After they feel heard and validated, you have created a space where you can then say, I really want to clear this up, because from my perspective, something different happened. Can I tell you my side of the story? The conversation that follows will be dramatically different. Trust me. I'm not saying that I've always been like that. I've been confrontational and I've learned my lesson the hard way. But when you use those small techniques, these slight changes in the way you speak, it makes a world of difference. But that's not everything. We still have one more thing. Once you've used I statements to express yourself, actively listened and validated the other person's feelings, you can start using the language of collaboration and common ground. This is where you pivot from focusing on the problem between you to focusing on solving the problem together. This involves using inclusive language like we and us. You can say things like, how can we solve this? Or, I think we both want the same thing, which is to feel respected in this relationship. Or, what's a solution that would work for both of us? Or, let's figure out a plan together. This language shifts the entire dynamic. It's no longer me versus you. It's us versus the problem, which is so different. You've conceptually moved to the same side of the table, looking at the problem together. This is where real solutions are born. So, my friends, the Peacemaker's Toolkit, I statements, active listening, validation, and collaborative language. These aren't tricks or manipulations. They are skills for communicating with more honesty, clarity, and empathy. So keep those in mind, but of course we're not done yet. Next, we're gonna focus on vocabulary. We're gonna talk about your peace lexicon. That's coming next. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. As we're learning these skills, it helps to have a clear understanding of the key concepts and vocabulary involved. Now let's build our peace lexicon with a few essential terms. Our first word is de-escalate. To de-escalate means to reduce the intensity of a conflict or a potentially violent situation. It's the opposite of escalate, obviously. When you use an I statement instead of a you statement, you are actively trying to de-escalate the conversation. The goal of a peacemaker is always to de-escalate tension so that a real conversation can happen. All right? This is our first word, de-escalate. Next, let's talk about reconciliation. Reconciliation is the restoration of friendly relations after a conflict. It's more than just an apology. It's the process of repairing a relationship and rebuilding trust. For true reconciliation to occur, both sides often need to feel that their grievances have been heard and acknowledged. It's very important. So that's about reconciliation. And next, we got a very important pair of words: empathy versus sympathy. Now, these are often used interchangeably, but they mean very different things. Sympathy is feeling for someone. It's when you see someone in a bad situation and you feel sorry for them. It creates a bit of distance, like saying, "Oh, you poor thing." That's sympathy. Empathy, on the other hand, is feeling with someone, not for someone. It's the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, to try and see the world from their perspective. Active listening and validation are acts of empathy. Sympathy says, "I feel sorry for you." Empathy says, "I am feeling with you." Empathy closes the distance. All right, so that's empathy and sympathy for you. And I know most people use them interchangeably, but you don't, because now you know the difference between empathy and sympathy, right? Now let's move on to the next word, and this one is compromise. A compromise is a settlement of a dispute that is reached by each side making concessions or giving something up. it's often about finding a middle ground. For example, you want to go out for Italian food. I want to go out for Mexican. As a compromise, let's go to that place that has both. In compromise, both sides lose a little to gain a peaceful resolution. Which leads me to a related but more powerful word, collaboration. Collaboration is when you work together to create a solution that is better than what either of you could have come up with alone. It's not just about meeting in the middle. It's about creating a new third option. For example, instead of compromising on a restaurant, you might say, you know what? We both just want a fun night out. What if we stay in, order a pizza, and watch that movie we both wanted to see? Collaboration moves beyond the original conflict to find a solution that satisfies the underlying needs of both people. All right? That was about collaboration. And finally, we got the word mediation. A mediation is a process where a neutral third person, a mediator, helps people in a dispute to negotiate a settlement. The mediator doesn't take sides or make a decision. Their job is to facilitate communication, helping both sides to listen to each other and find common ground. Mediation is a formal version of what friends often do for each other, helping two people in conflict to truly hear one another. So, my friends, your lexicon now includes de-escalate, reconciliation, empathy, compromise, collaboration, and mediation. Understanding these concepts gives you a richer framework for thinking and talking about peace. But that's not everything, of course. We're gonna put things into practice, and I'm going to share your challenges with you. So that's coming next. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Well, knowledge is great, but skill comes from practice. It's one thing to understand the idea of an I statement, it's another to actually use one in a heated moment. So I want to leave you with 3 practical challenges to help you turn these ideas into real-world skills. Challenge number 1, the I statement rewriter. Well, this is a writing challenge. I'm going to give you 3 common you statements. I want you to take a moment, maybe even pause the podcast if you want, and try to rewrite them as constructive I statements using the formula I feel, emotion, when, specific behavior, because, impact. All right? Here are the sentences. You're not listening to me at all. Second sentence, you're so unreliable, you were late again. The third sentence, why do you always have to be so critical of everything I do? These are your 3 sentences, my friends. That's the first challenge. Rewrite them as I statements. So go ahead and think about it. If you want to take some time, take some time. If you want to pause the podcast, you can do that. Or you can think about them later. But don't procrastinate. Don't say that I'm going to do them later and you never do, right? If you want, it's a podcast. If you pause, I'll wait for you, obviously. You can come back and listen to the other challenges. But if you're ready, I will help you with what I think are possible rewrites. Now, of course, yours might be different, and that's perfectly fine. This is just my take, right? Now, for the first one, you're not listening to me at all. A possible rewrite is, I feel frustrated and a little invisible right now when I see you looking at your phone while I'm talking, because it makes me feel like what I'm saying isn't important to you. And now let's move on to the second sentence. You are so unreliable, you were late again. Now, you could say something else. You can say something like, I feel anxious and disrespected when I have to wait 20 minutes past our agreed time, because it disrupts my schedule and makes me feel my time isn't valued. So that's one way to use I statements. And now for the last one. Why do you always have to be so critical of everything I do? An I statement version might be, I feel hurt and discouraged when I hear critical feedback about my work, because I'm trying my best and it makes me lose my confidence. My friends, practicing these rewrites helps to build the mental muscle so that in a real conversation, the more peaceful option is more readily available to you. It needs some practice. It's not gonna come up magically, especially when you are in a heated conversation. So, that was our first challenge. Our challenge number 2 is the active listening experiment. Now, this one is about listening and speaking. Sometimes, this week or next week, I challenge you to have one conversation where your primary goal is not to win, not to give advice, not to share your own story, but simply to make the other person feel completely and totally heard. Pick a conversation with a friend, a family member, or partner. As they speak, resist the urge to interrupt or formulate your response. Instead, use the tools of active listening. Paraphrase what they say. You can say things like, "So it sounds like you're saying something." Reflect their feelings. You can say something like, "That must have been so frustrating." Ask open-ended questions to deepen your understanding. "What was that like for you?" Or "Tell me more about that part." Just try it and see what happens. Observe how it changes the dynamic of the conversation. My guess is you will find that it creates a level of connection and trust that is surprising and incredibly rewarding. So that's the second challenge. Challenge number 3 is the vocabulary spotter. Now, this is a passive awareness challenge. As you go about your week, start paying attention to the language of conflict and peace around you. When you're watching a movie or a TV show, notice when a character uses a "you" statement and escalates a scene. Notice when another character uses validation to de-escalate it. Listen to news reports or political debates. Are the speakers using language to build bridges or to dig trenches? By becoming a conscious observer of these patterns, you'll become much more aware of them in your own speech. So, there you have it, my friends. The language of peace isn't about being weak or passive or letting people walk all over you. Not at all. In fact, it's the opposite. It requires immense strength, self-awareness, and skill. It's the difference between swinging a hammer wildly and using it with precision to build something strong and beautiful. The words we choose have power. They can create ripples that we can't even see. A single conversation that is handled with empathy and respect instead of anger and blame might seem like a small thing, but it's not. It's a small act of peace building. It strengthens a relationship. It makes the world, in that tiny moment, a less conflicted place. And those small moments add up, believe me. So, in our theme for this week so far, we've talked about the big idea of peace, and now we've talked about the words we use to build it. In our next episode, we're going to see how these ideas play out not in theory, but in a story. A powerful story of love, humanity, and the yearning for peace in the middle of the most violent place imaginable. It's a novella I wrote, and it's called The Lovers of No Man's Land. But of course, I abridged the novella. I made it into a short story so that it wouldn't last for like 2 or 3 hours. But I assure you, you're gonna love the story, and you're gonna love what we're gonna say about the story, especially how it relates to our topic for this week, peace. Until then, my friends, I encourage you to take on these challenges I just shared with you. Pay attention to your words, use them consciously, and remember, use them to build. Thank you very much for listening to the episode. I'm Danny, and this is another episode from English Plus Podcast. I'll see you again next time, and remember, never stop learning.